Hey guys, tonight we're venturing into the wild woods of 1970s America, a time when disco was king, bell-bottoms were a lifestyle, and the quest for Bigfoot had more enthusiasts than common sense. Yes, you heard me right. Forget the flashy blockers of Hollywood. We're digging into the absurd realities of being a Bigfoot hunter, back when leisure suits and questionable mustaches ruled the world. So before you get all cozy, do me a favour. Like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy my hair. I mean, I'm not desperate. Drop a comment below telling me where you're joining from and how your Bigfoot conspiracy theories are going. It's always entertaining to hear how many of you are still on the lookout for that elusive creature. Now, dim the lights, grab a fan for that soft background hum and settle in. Maybe even wrap yourself in a blanket, if only to shield yourself from the chilly thoughts of Sasquatch lurking in your backyard. Let's take a moment to ponder. Have you ever found yourself wondering what it's like to sleep in a tent surrounded by howling wolves? How about treading through muddy trails with nothing but a flashlight and the hope that this time Bigfoot won't mistake you for a really ugly tree? Would you outrun a man in a bear suit on a caffeine binge? Or would you just fall face first into the marsh trying to capture footage for YouTube? And now, congratulations. You've just woken up in 1975 where polyester is the fabric of choice, the woods are calling, and your mission to find Bigfoot has officially begun. Let's talk about the fashion choices made by 1970s Bigfoot hunters. Imagine an ensemble that could best be described as a love child between a discount safari guide and a disco ball. Mismatched flannels, corduroy vests and pants that could host their own electropop concerts. The only accessory? A medley of trail mix crumbs clinging on for dear life. Do you think these hunters believed their choice of attire would somehow attract Bigfoot? Or did they just want to blend in with the wild, yet somehow appear remarkably unshredded when they inevitably stumbled into the local diner for a post-hunt milkshake? You might picture a group of scruffy individuals sporting tight collars and bell-bottoms that somehow defy the laws of gravity as they venture into the woods armed to the teeth with outdated technology. The kind of folks who'd get stopped by a ranger just for looking suspiciously like lost hippies from a festival gone wrong. And the conversation is a recipe for disaster. Typically, they're debating whether the best camouflage is actually a selection of vibrant tie-dye, or perhaps the more traditional approach of living off the grid. As they wander through the underbrush, do they think about how their fashion choices are impacting their hunt? Will these bright orange suspenders improve my chances of blending in? Or will they just cause Bigfoot to ask for a fashion consultation? Perhaps the thought process goes deeper. What if Bigfoot is just a misunderstood creature snuggled up in a premium cotton hoodie, wishing for someone to understand his plight? You can practically hear them announcing, if I look ridiculous enough, maybe Bigfoot will come out of hiding and join me for a dance-off. While they wear their loud outfits proudly, the sound of rustling leaves takes on new significance. Everyone knows that Bigfoot is supposed to be stealthy. Meanwhile, the boots of these hunters are equipped with rust and compression socks. If they were trying to sneak up on Sasquatch, they'd alarm every critter within a 5-mile radius with the screeching sounds of their fashionable footwear, paired with their attempts at stealthy whispers, which more closely resemble the yell of a distressed goat. Just try to picture them tiptoeing with such grace that it's a wonder they don't trip over their own ill-advised footwear choices. And let's not forget about the grooming situation. Post-hunt showers, out of the question. Those shimmering locks of hair, exquisite presentation, the type of hairstyle fashioned entirely by the local squirrels would probably make Mother Nature herself weep. A beguiling concoction of dirt, sweat and trail mix remnants sprouting out from under their multicoloured beanies, shouting to the world, yes, I am an adventurer, and no, I do not own a hairbrush. But perhaps the question lies deeper. Is this fashion just plain absurdity? Or is it a symbol of perfect camaraderie? Every jarring hue and patterned piece of clothing a badge of honour? After all, it takes a certain kind of person to willingly embrace the spirit of the hunt, boldly donning outfits that rival 70s sitcom set pieces. In every mismatched stitch lies a story, a tradition woven from the fabric of friendship and camaraderie, uniting them in their quest to secure proof of a legendary creature, all while bickering about whether neon jackets would make them more visible to their elusive prey. And who knows? Maybe the Bigfoot they desperately seek admires their audacity. After all, if you were a creature existing in a world teeming with the audacity of disco and hustle, wouldn't you raise an eyebrow and say, "Now that's the spirit. This guy has pizzazz"? Sure, the fabric choices are eye-watering, but they also transmit assurance that adventures await in wild lands, and first impressions don't count when it comes to Bigfoot. As night falls in the forest and moths are just as impressed with the phosphorescent glow of the hunters' get-ups, one can't help but chuckle at the absurdity of it all. Here they are, clad in a tapestry of styles so mismatched it could be classified as a new form of wildlife camouflage. There's comfort in knowing, amid the worn boots and sweating panel hats, that the essence of what it means to be a loyal Bigfoot hunter is perhaps rooted in the joy of those ridiculous clothing choices, an unspoken code of honour representing their resolve to chase down the most elusive of legends, one ludicrous outfit at a time. So, as they tiptoe through the darkened woods, the shimmering fabric of their beliefs and blundering choices leads the way. And who's to say that Bigfoot isn't out there, watching all of this unfold, chuckling to himself at the motley crew of misplaced fashion, waiting for the day he can crash their campfire and deliver a wild punchline of his own? Because in the land of big, hairy legends, the line between hunting for the extraordinary and laughing at the absurdity of it all is as thin as the fabric that holds those questionable ensembles together. After a night spent watching the stars and debating if that rustling in the bushes was Bigfoot or just raccoons having a rave, it's time for breakfast. But forget your avocado toast and organic Java. 1970s Bigfoot hunters feast on breakfast burritos packed so tightly with questionable eggs and lumpy cheese that they're more like edible grenades. You struggle to choke it down amid the excited chatter about the one that got away, while secretly hoping the burrito won't decide to make a blinding exit of its own. As you gather around a makeshift table, really just a few logs stacked together with the careful precision of a toddler playing with blocks, the scent of sizzling sausage wafts through the air, mingling with the smoky aroma of a last night's campfire. You glance at your compatriots, who are all variations of the same enthusiastic zeal, hair tousled like they just fought a bear, mismatched plaid shirts that scream "I own an antique shop," and coffee stains that serve as badges of honour. This unholy gathering looks less like a hunting party and more like a band of accidental castaways trying to figure out how to incorporate beans into their breakfast every morning without inducing existential dread. As you munch on your burrito, half contemplating the firmness of the cheese and half wondering if you can discreetly dispose of it later, you overhear Tom regale the group with a tale about the mysterious Sasquatch whisperer he met at the local diner. Apparently this guy had some major insights on Bigfoot behaviour that included a theory about how the mythical creature responds only to 1970s disco music. Yes, you heard that right. If you really want to attract Bigfoot, you gotta lay down some Bee Gees. At this point, you begin to question your life choices. Was an undercover mission to coax a shy cryptid out of hiding really worth the risk of upsetting your stomach over a breakfast burrito that looks like the leftovers from a failed science experiment? Still, hope springs eternal. Perhaps this morning's breakfast is magical and will imbue you with the strength of 10 hunters, ready to face the wilds and the furry creature cloaked within it. Once breakfast winds down, it's time to pack up the leftovers, which consist of half-eaten burritos and that ever-mysterious gravy-like substance that no one dares question. You wonder if possibly refried beans have gone to a new cultural level you haven't discovered yet. One by one, your group emerges from their respective food comas, shuffling towards the grand adventure that awaits. Camcorders clutched in oversized hands, your ragtag band charges into the woods, unfazed by the possibility that anyone witness to your antics might question your collective sanity. But the magic of camaraderie. The joy of legends, myths and breakfast burritos are enough to rally everyone to conquer the great expanse of the forest. As you step onto the trails, careful not to trip over the gnarled roots that are more like decorative greenhouses for the local insect population, you find your pace in sync with the imaginable footfalls of creatures that might be more real than the dubious lunch lurking in your stomach. The echoes of laughter ring through the trees as your group argues over who's leading and who should be navigating. It's a bit like herding cats, but these are cats equipped with both a sense of tenacity and an urgency to uncover the truth behind cryptozoology. Somewhere in the underbrush, you swear you just heard heavy footsteps. Or was that just Greg stubbing his toe as he clumsily navigates the trail? Before long, the philosophical debates that began over breakfast ensue again. Maybe Bigfoot's just misunderstood, Tom mutters, sending your stomach into a giggle-fueled turmoil that begs you to both laugh and maintain some level of sanity about your quest. Maybe he just wants to hang out with us. He loves the same music. With vistas expanding before you and the thrill of exploration coursing through your veins, it becomes evident that breakfast emerged as more than just a meal. It became a prelude to the grand absurdity awaiting you. The thrill of swerving through trees and brambles as a team holds its own charm. If there's anything 1970s America taught you, it's that discovering Bigfoot could be like unearthing a mixtape of truths wrapped in laughter, bizarre ornaments, and the sage wisdom of dubious dietary choices. Every burrito, every cringy story, and every terrible plan to lure in Bigfoot serves as fuel for your group's wild mission. You march forth, a breakfast-fueled crew of determined enthusiasts ready to exclaim, "Sasquatch or bust!" With just a touch of breakfast burrito regret lingering, you press onward, your spirit buoyed by the camaraderie of chaotic hunting, bravely ignoring the digestive risks lurking just below the surface. Now let's delve into the truly essential gear for your Bigfoot expedition, which consists of an assortment of gadgets straight out of a low-budget sci-fi movie. You've got a walkie-talkie that looks like it's been used in at least 5 wars, a camcorder that weighs more than an anvil, and a Bigfoot detector that seems to beep in response to your carbonated snacks. I mean, if there's ever a time you're going to be caught unprepared, it's when you absolutely need to look cool while pretending to communicate with a mythological creature. First things first, let's talk about that walkie-talkie. Honestly, it could have been retired to a museum of bad inventions, alongside the VHS player and the aforementioned camcorder. The thing crackles with the kind of static usually reserved for ghost hunters or amateur radio enthusiasts lost in a corn maze. There's a solid chance you'll have hilarious conversations with random people halfway across the country in the middle of your Bigfoot hunt, because who doesn't want to chat about the price of corn while you're traipsing around in the woods, clutching your ancient gear like it's a medieval weapon? And can we give a moment of silence to that camcorder? Proudly weighing down your backpack like a ship anchor, this hunk of technology has been through more adventures than you ever will. A cherished relic from the past, it thrives on shaky filming, bad lighting, and unintentional bloopers featuring your friends climbing over logs and tripping over roots. You're pretty sure it once belonged to your uncle's cousin, and if you squint hard enough, you can just make out the duct tape holding it together, This is literally a device begging for retirement. And don't kid yourself, when you try filming the majestic trees swaying in the wind, you end up capturing more footage of your thumb than the landscape. Next up is the pièce de résistance, the Bigfoot detector. This device is the stuff of dreams, or nightmares, depending on how you look at it. Picture this: a flimsy plastic box equipped with blinking lights and an ear-piercing alarm that, if it were any louder, could wake the entire forest. It's designed to beep like a madman anytime anything remotely human or squirrel-like crosses its path. Through your panicked search for Bigfoot, it's not surprising that you'll eventually come to the conclusion that it might have been invented by a conspiracy theorist who was actually more interested in tracking down their lost cat. Oh, and those boots. Let's not forget the must-own footgear of these hunts. The oversized, muddy, waterproof boots that are practically sentient and probably have their own Instagram accounts. A rugged, clunky fashion statement that rivals even the toughest of lumberjacks. They scream, "I'm serious about my Sasquatch search." Except they also tend to double as fully functioning mini-swamps that trap water and mud, transforming your feet into a slimy, soggy nightmare. Trust me, nobody looks fearsome while trying to shake out packed mud from a pair of boots the size of small boats. The kits also include an extensive array of snacks, because what is a Bigfoot hunt without the essentials? Nothing says serious expedition better than a backpack filled with trail mix, beef jerky, and questionable energy drinks that fuel your adventures. You can't help but wonder, is half of it food for you? Or are you just building a snack shrine in hope of luring in Bigfoot for a chat over protein bars? Either way, you'll find yourself dramatically snacking on the trail, while plotting a perfectly reasonable theory on why Bigfoot prefers barbecue-flavoured snacks over the classic options. And let's not forget the essential survival manual, which is ironically a glorified pamphlet that reads more like an urban legend than a practical guide. Full of poorly printed illustrations showing how to identify Bigfoot tracks, which may or may not resemble a giant chicken's footprint, alongside exaggerated tales that have become folklore, you can't shake the feeling that you're only one step away from a game of charades where the goal is to imitate a creature you've never seen. A game of pretend to be Bigfoot is probably the only thing standing between you and finding the mythical creature, or your dignity. As you head into the woods with this hilariously misguided assembly of equipment, you can't help chuckling at the absurdity. After all, becoming a Bigfoot hunter in the 70s was an adventure fueled by a mix of genuine curiosity, unquestionable absurdity, and an unmistakable sense of camaraderie among the absolutely determined and hilariously hopeful adventurers. And really, isn't that the real treasure of tracking down a legend? You're not just seeking hair samples, you're collecting memories, laughter, and remarkably terrible footage that will provide comedy gold for years to come. Now, let's gear up and hit that uncharted path, where the legend of Bigfoot awaits, and likely some equally ridiculous tales to tell. Ah, the campfire, where theories go wild, stories are swapped like trading cards, and everyone swears they heard a growl just beyond the tree line. The night's entertainment often includes pointing at shadows and wondering quietly, yet raucously, if squirrels might have evolved to become Bigfoot's secret agents. You can't help but think, what's more terrifying? The possibility of encountering a legendary beast, or the reality of sharing a tent with Greg, who insists on recounting his second-hand ghost stories about his cousin's weird uncle? As the flames flicker, illuminating the faces of your fellow hunters, you realise that the atmosphere is ripe for imagination. Each crackle of the fire seems to coalesce into another story of near encounters, blending truth and bravado like a poorly made cocktail. "Last summer, I swear I saw him," shouts Bob, the over-enthusiastic member of the group. who claims to have spent a week stalking the elusive cryptid. Of course, Bob's idea of stalking mostly involved him sweating profusely in a bunny suit, an entirely different theory altogether. Between slurps of cheap beer, you can't help but wonder how much truth is woven into this tapestry of exaggerated claims. You ponder aloud how menacing it must have been to be a hunter in the wilds of the Pacific Northwest back in the 70s, especially dressed in the layers of polyester that could probably double as kindling. The group erupts in laughter, imagining the terrifying sight of flammable fashion meeting a woolly behemoth in heated confrontations. "Hold it right there, Sasquatch," you chuckle. "Let me grab my fire retardant disco ensemble first." The thought of Bigfoot being scared off by someone desperately trying to save a jumpsuit from flames is oddly comforting. Then, as if on cue, Greg starts another tall tale about Bigfoot walking through his backyard. "He was stealing my garden gnomes," Greg exclaims, eyes wide with excitement. "I saw he had two gnomes." His retelling is vibrant and loud, filled with heroic bravado. You can't help but imagine Bigfoot dramatically striding through suburban backyards at midnight, snatching garden ornaments like the world's clumsiest burglar. I mean, what was he doing? Spy on the neighbours? A particular interest in home decor? You're swept up in giggles as the group unanimously starts to plan a reality show called Gnome Stalker Bigfoot Edition. As the stories unravel and the night unfolds, conversations shift from the possibility of Bigfoot's existence to another pressing matter. What constitutes a good Bigfoot sighting? Is it seeing the creature itself, or simply catching shadows under the moonlight that play tricks on your weary eyes? One brave soul proposes that they should hold a contest to determine the most convincing evidence for Bigfoot's existence. The grand prize? A lifetime supply of highly questionable fur coats in case of an encounter. Suddenly, the fire crackles louder, but not one of you moves to put it out. This absurdity is a gift that keeps giving. Not to be outdone, someone brings up the unbelievable array of supposed footage of Bigfoot. You all begin impersonating the classic shaky cam movement that defined poorly filmed Sasquatch documentaries. "Oh, look, over there," you throw your arm theatrically. Is that a tree stump, or a dishevelled partygoer who decided that Bigfoot mythology was far preferable to their actual life? The poking fun devolves into an exploration of wannabe Bigfoot spotting shows, complete with over-the-top antics that see you all reenacting how you would capture evidence. "You, take the left flank, I'll get the grainy footage." The faux excitement in your voices makes you laugh so hard that tears start to form. As the fire continues to consume its wood portions, the conversation turns to the disappointments of previous hunts. "I've seen more action from my washing machine on spin cycle than these hunts," someone quips, and the crowd erupts in amusement. "Oh, come on," another retorts. "At least the washing machine has the courtesy to spin back to its original form." Hypothetical discussions give way to your own frustrations, the nagging feeling that Bigfoot might indeed just be some elaborate hoax or an inside joke between secret nature lovers. But just as the night seems perfect, you realise that a shadow moves. Was it a trick of the light? Panic momentarily replaces amusement, and the stories dissolve into hushed whispers. You all squint into the darkness, now genuinely wondering if tonight's gatherers might have stirred up something in the woods. "Well, if it's really Bigfoot, do I get to keep my gnome?" comes a nervous reply, cutting through the tension with a string of laughter. With adrenaline still buzzing in your veins, laughter sets the stage for more twisting tales around the campfire, the kind that makes you question society, sanity, and whether or not you'll ever venture into the woods again. The only certainty now: tomorrow's recounts are likely going to make history in the best-worst Bigfoot encounter department, and you'll be the leading character enjoying a high-resolution cinematic embarrassment. Now we get to the serious stuff, this search for signs of Bigfoot. This, of course, involves more tracking techniques than an episode of a crime show. You've got footprints that look suspiciously like they were made by a really aggressive toddler, tree scratches that could have been made by a bear, and mysterious smells that leave you pondering if it's Bigfoot or just your breakfast burrito trying to escape. Will anyone stop to ask why we still don't trust our noses or sense of smell? Picture this. The sun has barely crested over the horizon, and you're knee-deep in forest foliage, trying to retrace the steps of a mythical creature, armed only with a tattered manila folder of Sasquatch evidence that includes blurry photos, poorly drawn maps, and a long grocery list of snacks for the road. Each footprint you see becomes a dramatic moment in the suspense film playing in your mind. Was it a sign of life, or just a local deer on a confidence stroll? As you crouch down to photograph this critical evidence, the sun peeks through the trees, illuminating the dirt, a perfect frame for what could be the groundbreaking photo that finally validates your years of wandering the woods in search of the truth. Now, take a deep breath. What's that smell? Oh yes, there's nothing quite like the bouquet of pine needles mixed with the distinct odour of that burrito you maybe should have left back at camp. It's like a culinary experiment gone wrong, perfuming the air with an aroma sweet enough to attract every endangered animal in the vicinity. You squint suspiciously at your companions, wondering if they can smell it too, or if that's just you questioning all of your life choices since yesterday's dinner. As you continue your search, the thrill of Bigfoot tracking takes a turn into scientific territory. You might find yourself armed with a barely functioning magnifying glass, going around like a detective in a cozy mystery novel. Maybe there's even a catchy theme song playing in your head as they try to solve the even more critical case of who brought the most inexplicably awful snacks. You start assessing indicators like possible signs of Sasquatch feeding. Could that pile of acorns over there be his lunch spot? Is that a broken twig the work of a gentle giant? Or is Bambi getting a little too ambitious in his foraging? Next up, the thrill of spotting tree knocks, a sound that hunters argue is the Bigfoot equivalent of sending a distress signal. You and your fellow enthusiasts will spend hours trying to mimic these sounds, including overly excited whoops and desperate rhythmic knocks that might as well be the soundtrack to an audition for a percussion ensemble. The trees looks down at you with judgment. You think Sasquatch appreciates this interpretation of a warning call, they seem to say, while you course through the realization that any neighborhood bears might get more of a chuckle than some dignified legendary creature. Now, let's get real. Each time you're convinced you've created a Sasquatch symphony that would impress even the grumpiest wood nymph, you notice a curious fellow plodding along behind you. A squirrel. His beady eyes look at you like you have offended his ancestors. Suddenly, you doubt your entire strategy. It finally dawns on you. Is an elusive mythical beast even worth the trouble if it means competing with the wildlife that's apparently tougher than you? The hunt continues as excitement builds around the campfire at dusk. A few ghost stories have been shared about the giant figure lurking in the depth of the pines, but the highlight of the evening is when someone says they found tracks. Big tracks. Everyone scrambles for the latest episode of Is Bigfoot Going Vegan, collectively unravelling like a pack of excited puppies. Your heart races as the group follows the tracks, balancing a mixture of whimsical hopes and skepticism. That is, until you realise that the tracks are actually just laundry left out to dry in the neighbour's yard. By the time the night draws to a close, you'll find that the thrill of tracking Bigfoot has transformed into an unofficial competition for the most absurd theory, blending the essence of hunting and rollercoaster laughter within a single experience. From questioning the scent profiles of burritos to asking if squirrels are in on the secret, you and your crew have created a perfect recipe for community bonding. And who knows? Maybe it wasn't the mythical creature that mattered, but the raucous story shared beneath the stars that will echo far more than the memory of the search itself. As you tuck into your sleeping bag filled with delightful thoughts of the day's misadventures and figures hiding behind trees, you can't help but laugh. Somewhere out there in the forest, Sasquatch might just be chuckling along too, thankful that you were more entertained with the chase than the catch, and maybe, just maybe, planning to hop out and snag a few burritos of his own. Whispering is an art. In the world of Sasquatch hunting, every harsh syllable feels like broken glass, signalling Bigfoot to run for the hills. You huddle together, participating in what you can only call a tactical whisper-off, trying to communicate the plan without alerting every woodland creature within a 5-mile radius. The irony. You realise you've been practicing this skill more for the potential of scaring away Bigfoot than in actual communication, all while desperately trying not to trip over the roots you forgot were even there. The moment someone whispers, "Guys, I think I saw something," it escalates the whole camp. Suddenly it's all hushed tones and exaggerated gestures, as if the sheer energy of the declaration could have conjured Bigfoot right there in front of your awkwardly spaced sandwiches. As you lean in closer, someone's elbow finds the camp stove and knocks over a perfectly brewed cup of questionable forest coffee, flooding your makeshift nest with a rich aroma that's somehow both enticing and terrifying. Is this what people mean by a cost for the hunt? It's during these whispering sessions that you begin to feel like you're all in a group of conspiracy theorists too paranoid to speak above a hush, using hushed tones as if saying Bigfoot aloud might doom your plans to failure, like saying Beetlejuice 3 times. You glance sideways at your buddies, half expecting someone to retract their comments faster than a cat in a dog park. Have you ever thought about how silly it looks? 5 grown adults hunched over the campfire, whispering about a 300-pound hairy hominid that may or may not be a part of the local wildlife. Every sneeze or rustling sound around you sends the group into a panic, as if Bigfoot himself were about to crash your gathering for an unsuspecting sit-down chat. "Shh! Did you hear that?" comes the urgent whisper from Greg, who somehow has the least credible Bigfoot encounter stories, but continues to fuel the fire for everyone else. The knowledgeable experts in the group start presenting theories involving triangular formations, tree branch structures, and something about ground temperature readings, while you scramble to pretend you know exactly what they are discussing. Google wasn't invented to help non-experts keep up, and on that note, the intricate art of whispering takes on an increasingly comedic tone, flailing between genuine concern and ridiculous theatrics. Someone starts a low hum to signal their belief that Bigfoot may be nearby. Meanwhile, someone else tries to add harmonies, thinking this makes you a kind of enchanted choir meant to summon the beast. It feels less like an expedition, and more like a bizarre audition for a forest musical where the leading role secretly hopes to land on Broadway. Yet, when the crickets suddenly hush, as if nature itself holds its breath in anticipation, you begin to doubt yourself. Are we serious enough to actually attract Bigfoot with this concoction of silliness? Surely there must be something in the whisper vortex that translates to Sasquatch. Do you think he appreciates the arts, you wonder, beginning to convince yourself that maybe this is not an expedition after all, but rather an audition for a very unique rendition of The Sound of Music? As the tactical whispers continue, there's a profound sense of camaraderie that emerges from obscurity, folks sharing their best Bigfoot impressions and investigating every sound, whispering in excitement and leaving you needing new waterproof shoes. Your internal monologue oscillates between excitement and confusion over whether you're truly seeking the beast, or if you're just having an unexpectedly humorous group bonding experience with your friends. The whispers morph from tactical discussions to light-hearted jests, as Greg attempts to sound like Sasquatch, while simultaneously sounding like he's calling a herd of stubborn goats to dinner. Amid all this, a sudden rustling in the bushes steals away your attention, cutting through the primal commotion. In a collective gasp, you freeze, eyes wide, breaths held, wondering if this finally is the moment you've all been waiting for. Perhaps your impeccable whispering and folding techniques have indeed summoned the great beast. Yet, just as suddenly, out pops a raccoon wearing a rather guilty expression, as if he just raided your secret stash of snacks. You can't help but burst into laughter, which is quickly suppressed like a panicked cat trying to hide from the vacuum. The entire camp bursts with chuckles, and in that moment, you realise that regardless of the incoherent whispers and absurd antics, it's these memories forged in the woods that drive the spirit for such ridiculous adventures, where laughter echoes louder than the solitary calls of Bigfoot. So, as the sun begins to set, you dismiss the whispers and instead gather around the fire, wise to the fact that while Sasquatch may remain elusive, the joy of the journey and the company you keep will forever be present in the heart of your hunt. After a long day filled with hope and rumours of sightings, mostly from itchy hunters, it's time to settle down for a night in the wilderness. The thrill of being so close to the legendary Bigfoot gives way to startling paranoia. What's that sound? A bear? A raccoon? That other guy's snoring? The night air carries the stray sounds of nature contrasting with your imaginative fears, leaving you to contemplate if you'd rather be chased by Sasquatch or sift through the Gillette layer of the guy's camping gear a few tents down. Settling around the campfire, you find solace in the flickering flame like the last smouldering hope of a romantic comedy. Friends share theories about Bigfoot's potential diet, ranging from vegetarian, definitely plant-based, to more of a cheeseburger connoisseur. But while they merrily debate Bigfoot's culinary preferences, yours wanders to the wandering shadows, dancing with purpose, possibly plotting to abduct you for a Sasquatch cult. Just as you're about to jump up and conclude it's better to sleep with one eye clenched, you willfully surrender to the sense of camaraderie, laughter milling like beaming fireflies in the warm glow. Then there's the strange sensation creeping up your spine, combined with the tickling of forest leaves against your consciousness as the woods breathe around you. Your imagination knows no bounds. Was that rustle a warning or an invitation? You begin to wonder how many cryptid hunters before you have succumbed to the encroaching darkness that sometimes whispers sweet nothings before revealing its thought-provoking horrors. Follow that noise into oblivion or cling to your warm sleeping bag like it's your last line of defense. Assuming the position, tucked into your mummy bag like a forgettable burrito, you mentally prepare for the night ahead. The temperature drops, and goosebumps rush across your skin like the climax of a horror film. The sound of a twig snapping sends you diving deeper into your cocoon. It's bedlam. Your companions' whispers surround you as they continue pointing out how every creak, every howl, and every fox or owl call might just be a harbinger of Sasquatch's arrival. Except, instead of emerging from the shadows like an ethereal being, you half expect him to step into the campfire circle wearing a Hawaiian shirt, chugging a colada while smugly announcing, "You guys really believed." At some point, the deep breathing of that other guy drifts into a rhythmic pattern, a lullaby of snores, and it suddenly transforms into the most monstrous sound imaginable. Is this the kind of thing that drives Bigfoot away, or does the creature find it comforting? A sound as ludicrous and calming as an out-of-tune accordion at a carnival? There's a high likelihood it's a way to soothe its wild heart, leading you to believe that perhaps Sasquatch also struggles with insomnia, brought on by relentless ideas of celebrity. As the night crawls deeper, you might consider that the fat chance cinema has taught you about monsters largely revolves around the blockbuster, thinking they want nothing but to pursue, chase, and ultimately make you the main course at their natural buffet. At this point, the only thing missing from your encounter is a flashlight tilted just right, boasting haunted thoughts and freshly fried suspicion that strikes at every corner of your imagination. Close your eyes, but the thought of what if prods. Sleep becomes more elusive than Sasquatch himself. In an attempt to regulate your heightened anxiety, you shift in your sleeping bag with the finesse of a lumbering moose trying to find comfort on the itchy forest floor. Each move aims to summon forth the sweet embrace of sleep, but is thwarted by conscious paranoia, reminding you of the very real possibility of a creature watching from the dark. The shadowy figure looms larger than life, a blend of nature's mischief and existential dread, a threat wrapped in a fur coat, or perhaps just a stray German shepherd breed looking for a snuggle. And just as you drift there, your friend on the other side of the circle evaluates his choice of tent. You can hear him muttering, "Are you willing to risk it all for a view of Bigfoot? What about my food stashing abilities?" You dreamily giggle inside, clawing at the sanity of companionship, and sink into the night, with your mind teetering on the edge of rugged wilderness and the fragility of friendship. By the end of it, you realize, whether or not Bigfoot finds you, the true legend lies in the connections, absurd conversations, and the laughter that echo between you campmates. The night transforms into more than just a scary tale, but a shared exploration, unveiling dark warmth snuggled against that burning hope, a hope that even if Sasquatch is not real, the spirit of adventure and camaraderie thrives in every cringeworthy camping misadventure, mismatched conversations, and unlikely friendships forged beneath the full moon of a starlit sky. The story of Bigfoot transcends just the hunt. It has emerged as a pop culture phenomenon. It spills over into movies, TV shows, and songs. So many songs. But have you ever wondered about the musicians who decided a riff on Bigfoot would resonate with the masses? Some of these bold souls may have actually believed they could chart a path to fame through the great Sasquatch tides of 1970s rock, only to be met with incredulous bewilderment by radio stations everywhere. Wonder if any of them had ever met a Bigfoot in the first place. Let's take a minute to explore the explosion of Bigfoot's cultural footprint during the era. It was a time when every other band was attempting to woo the public's attention with wild ideas and scanty research. Songs with lyrics such as "Bigfoot's Gonna Get You" or "Sasquatch Shuffle" famously never reached the top of the charts, yet they were still blasted from AM radios, riding the waves of a rock and roll hippie revolution. You've got to wonder if these musicians had any clue about songwriting, or if they simply indulged in too many herbal teas around the campfire and figured, why not? Films also jumped onto the Bigfoot bandwagon, culminating in a cinematic disaster called The Legend of Boggy Creek. It claimed to be a documentary, yet felt about as real as a wobbly set made from cardboard and glue. Audiences couldn't get enough. They packed theatres, half expecting to witness an actual Sasquatch leap from the screen. Instead, they were treated to shaky amateur footage of trees swaying dramatically, accompanied by commentary so fraught with sensationalism that you half expected the narrator to break into a dance at any moment. Meanwhile, TV shows like In Search Of featured stilted interviews with convinced locals who claimed to have spotted Bigfoot during weekend jaunts in the woods. Cerberus-style barking may have come from neighbouring dogs, and strained skepticism could be heard from researchers analysing fuzzy footage of what was most likely an oversized log. The lines between evidence and fable blurred, and yet millions tuned in, eyes glued, popcorn clutched, half expecting each episode to bring them one step closer to the hairy truth. It wasn't just musicians and filmmakers trying to capitalise on the legend either. The soft drink industry, in its undeniable quest for novelty, unleashed its own Bigfoot-themed concoction, leaving consumers wondering if the secret ingredient was actually marshmallow fluff and eye of newt. You could almost picture the board meeting. Listen, if we slap a Bigfoot label on this, we're guaranteed free advertising. Who wouldn't try something called Sasquatch soda? Spoiler alert, that would be a resounding number of people, as that marketing strategy floundered faster than you could say, Bigfoot's better as a myth than a beverage. Linger for a moment on those iconic Bigfoot sightings captured in photo form, one blurry picture after another, all promising solid proof yet producing mere grins of bemusement from experts. Some skeptics even argued that if Bigfoot did exist, he sure had an incredible sense of humour, given the sheer ridiculousness of the evidence that found its way into magazines and newspapers. What kind of creature looks that good from 100 yards away? A media darling, perhaps? Yet despite the absurd manifestations of Bigfoot's cultural invasion, it continued to thrive. Merchandise featuring the creature sprouted everywhere. Plush toys, action figures, even Halloween costumes. Suddenly, every backyard party had someone lumbering about in the latest Bigfoot costume, flailing under the pressure of expectations and hot polyester fabric. It begs the question, did any of these folks believe they were channeling the spirit of Sasquatch or just perpetuating a collective joke? In that roaring chaos of pop culture, Bigfoot transformed from a ghostly figure lurking in the shadows to a yellow brick road paved with laughter, a safe haven for families seeking thrills and laughs through campfire storytelling. The creature became an icon. He personified resilience, existing in a world that often threatened to let him slip into urban legend oblivion. Bigfoot, the hairy beast of the unknown, became more than a tale. He became a symphony of societal hilarity within which people could laugh at themselves and their fears. So, as you cozy up and dig into those warm memories of Saturday night monster movies over microwave popcorn, remember that Bigfoot isn't just a legend meant to frighten children. He's the icon of unbelievable tales stitched cunningly into pop culture's fabric. There's a comforting absurdity in the idea that this resilient creature still walks, or lumbers, among us, even if only in raucous jokes or half-sung chorus lines echoing through the halls of history. Who knows, maybe one day he'll slap on a disco ball and join the party himself, pants and all. Dinner after a day of tracking can only be described as culinary creativity gone wrong. The menu includes mystery meat that's likely gotten into everything it shouldn't have, along with raw onions that'll singe your eyebrows off. Who knew aquatic corn could be so not edible? There's a group consensus that the sheer act of cooking over the campfire adds to the adventure, while in reality it's just a silent competition to see whose food will end up being weaponized against the raccoons first. As the sun sets and you gather around the flickering flames, the air is thick with both anticipation and a dim sense of impending doom, mainly regarding what's actually on today's menu. Sure, you were optimistic at breakfast when the plan was casually thrown around about tonight's gourmet campfire feast, but by this point, everyone is grappling with the reality that nobody has any idea how to cook anything over a fire other than hot dogs. So here you are, fingers crossed that the mystery meat will surprise you in more of a culinary way, rather than by launching a full-blown domestic crisis later on. The first breath of smoke wafts into your nostrils, offering a promise that your meal will be both delicious and profoundly regrettable. This smoke is so intense, it could easily be mistaken for a signal to the nearby wildlife that dinner is served. In moments, half the hunters are arguing over whether the meat smells a bit like chicken or the unfortunate memory of college dorm food. Spoiler alert, it's most definitely not chicken, unless chicken was written in invisible ink. let's not forget classic side dishes served with a blend of misplaced enthusiasm and sheer terror. The infamous trail mix stands proud as the star of the meal. What once consisted of wholesome nuts, enticing fruit, and sharp granola has now been diluted by everything left over in every pocket. You've now got half-eaten gummy bears mingling with suspiciously crunchy granola and something that could have been a walnut or possibly a squirrel nut from last year's hunting trip. Is it a delicacy or an accidental survival resource? At this moment, who can know? Meanwhile, with bedazzled marshmallow roasting sticks in hand, the big debate opens about the optimal toasting method for the perfect s'more. Some swear by the slow roll technique, hovering the marshmallow over the flames like a seasoned chef. Others, in a fit of primal passion, go all in, setting their sugary glob on fire and creating a blackened horror to plop onto a cracker. It adds character, they say, and also a deeply smoky flavour, which is just a polite way of saying it tastes like charcoal. Trying to keep the food captivating proves arduous when the conversation derails into old ghost stories or theories about the cryptid lurking in the woods. A strange alliance springs up as imaginations run wild, distracting everyone from the culinary misadventures. You imagine Bigfoot roaming around just outside your campfire light, peeking curiously at your collection of half-burnt mystery meats, whilst contemplating which is worse, the hatred of campfire cuisine, or the loss of his dignity letting humans stumble around with spatulas in the woods. As your fellow hunters take bites of the decidedly chewy meat, you brace yourself for what could only be described as the essential campfire ritual of survival, forging bonds over shared suffering. It's not just dinner, it's an exercise in bravery, someone proclaims with a glassy look in their eyes, cramming a morsel into their mouth while solemnly debating about which bad life choices led them here. As the meal drags on, a growing sense of camaraderie washes over the group, quite akin to a bizarre shared polyamorous relationship with food. Someone dashes off to fill up on condiments, bringing back suspicious bottles of ketchup and mustard that might just be gaining sentience at the bottom of the cooler. You wrap your fingers around a slightly melted sauce packet, pondering whether it was bred from organic tomatoes or whether it's an ensemble of predatory plant life seeking revenge from your stomach. The campfire's crackle complements the desperate voices exchanging playful jabs at their own culinary woes. Did you really boil that water or just splash it round a little? Ultimately, what starts as a dinner filled with confusion and culinary mysteries transforms into a food celebration as laughter fills the night. Culinary experiments and half-hearted acts of bravery have morphed into legends waiting to be retold. Because at the end of this chaos, whether you've successfully managed to feed literal food to the raccoons or choked down your fears a little more, everyone walks away satisfied with their wonky adventures, alongside perhaps an absurdly heightened level of appetite for just about anything next time. The only regrets here stem from not bringing enough hidden snacks for the trip. After all, what's a Bigfoot hunt without plenty of dodged half-roasted marshmallows and horror cooking? As the embers cool, we realise perhaps dinner was never really the point. Rather, it was the communal bonding over questionable meals and tasty tales that truly fed everyone's souls, mystery meat and all. The very philosophy of becoming one with nature is hilarious when you examine patrons of the local diner the following week. Are they really on the verge of total enlightenment, pondering Bigfoot's existential crisis with every greasy flapjack? The truth is, most of them by week's end have lost their external layers to nature's sticky residue, while their internal layers are questioning a lot of life choices made over a plate of meatloaf. As you sit with your crew, someone inevitably begins a deep philosophical monologue about the cosmos and Sasquatch, while another tries to disguise the sound of their stomach grumbling as they wonder if Bigfoot might also enjoy a side of fries. What you quickly realise, however, is that the only thing the pursuit of Bigfoot has truly unified is a bunch of mismatched hunters downing cups of coffee and secretly regretting the questionable burritos they forced down the previous night. "You should have seen the absolute size of those tracks," someone boasts, gesturing wildly before sending another spoonful of syrup cascading onto their pancake, a classic moment of dexterity rivaling any Olympic event. Did anyone actually see Bigfoot? Perhaps. But after 4 days camping in the woods, the focus has shifted from the big furry creature to the larger existential question of how many slices of bacon will suddenly appear before you. Before you know it, every camping trip has transformed into a bizarre social experiment where bonding over roasted marshmallows doubles as couples therapy for trying to convince your barbecue-loving buddy that, no, Sasquatch is not going to come to the next cookout, absolutely not. Instead, disillusioned hunters gather by the train tracks of life, laughing as they agree the only true big find this week was the half-eaten burger left under Jim's tent. All the while, they muse about nature's mysteries interspersed with the rising aroma of diner hash browns that would jitter any Sasquatch back into its shadows. As the pendulum of conversation swings, complaints of annoying bugs appear, soon evolving into a frenzied discussion laden with unwavering conspiracy theories about how mosquitoes were the true foot soldiers for Sasquatch. One hunter, with his feeble hat tilted askew, stands up, declaring loudly, "If they're working for him, I want to know what their salary is." Alarms ring out, and suddenly, the diner feels less like a friendly local haunt and more like a gathering of elite Bigfoot scholars who believe they've cracked the code on Sasquatch economics. Where's their scholarship? You ponder that among the remnants of your pancakes while jabbing your fork into an inexplicably stiff piece of toast. And what about the sights you wish you could have seen? Each fuzzy, muddled image documenting blurry figures lurching at the corner of the camera feels more fictional than friend-driven. Might the entire hunt just consist of too many late-night snack runs and people acting slightly odd? You consider that the image of Bigfoot might have been the unified product of minds muddled by late-night thinks, ambitious desires, and snack-fueled hallucinations in the great outdoors. As the day comes to a close and you leave the diner behind, those moments in nature forge a reality that binds everyone almost seamlessly together. A camaraderie encaptured in the quiet truths of friendship, odd recollections, and those faint glimmers known as happiness. You can't help but chuckle as the thought strikes you. Perhaps Bigfoot is lurking closer than we think, not in the deep woods, but at the corner booth planning a snowy escape route with cream and sugar in hand. He might be sipping coffee and sharing his wisdom, while laughing at the lot of you scrambling to create a mythical existence for him that would one day end up as fodder for diner discussions. So as you rise to leave with your crew, undeniably bonded by the experience, it dawns on you that the hunt for Bigfoot may be less about finding the elusive creature, and more about discovering every questionable truth about humanity, friendship, and the real sticky situations born from sausage links and flapjacks through the decades. You glimpse back at the diner and laugh, realizing that perhaps the most rewarding pursuit of all is wrestling with a plate of hashed browns while sharing tales of Bigfoot bite after juicy bite until the next adventure awaits. Times being what they are, the moment you think you've seen Bigfoot often results in the kind of anticlimactic disappointment reserved for forgotten appliances. That rustle in the bushes. Just John trying to sniff out another burrito. Your heart races with hope, only to realise that Sasquatch probably isn't joining you for a smoke break and maybe isn't real in the first place. Yet still here you are, wondering whether another meal of bush-fried potatoes could convince the big guy to join you by the fire. As your mind spins wildly from curiosity to fear, anticipation begins to build. Did you really hear something? Was it a roar, a legacy of the forest, or just Greg snoring one campsite over? Suddenly, every twig snapped sounds like an impending encounter. It's a remarkable mix of emotions that leaves you pondering if you've ever been this vastly unprepared for anything in your life. Who put you in charge of spotting an ancient beast? Did you apply somewhere for this job, or did it just happen accidentally? While other hunters take their strategic positions, brandishing oversized cameras and looking more like they're preparing for an audit than an encounter, you're stuck doing whatever you can not to scream at the sight of a waddling raccoon stealing last night's leftovers. You remind yourself that the woods are indeed a place of wonder, as much as they are a domain of unexpected wild creatures feasting on your discarded granola bars. Then it happens, the moment you've trained your mind for over days of dubious and protein-raised food choices. A shadow, taller than the average human, steps quietly into a small clearing, just within your eyesight. Your pulse quickens. Could this at last be the moment to mark the history books? You quietly begin fumbling for your camcorder while beckoning the rest of your group to shush. Would this finally be the glory you're waiting for? But alas, as the figure draws nearer, your expectations start plummeting heavier than people watching budget pie-eating contests after New Year's resolutions. The shadow is not the fabled Bigfoot at all, but instead it's just old MacDonald on a spirited late-night stroll to check his traps. 200 pounds of plaid and an impressive pot-belly are divine parallels to what you had imagined Sasquatch to look like. Crushing disappointment washes over you, leaving nothing but dreams aching in your heart and a mental note to never wear shiny clothing again in dark woods. The false alarm then leads to the grand discussion around the campfire, where each hunter will recount their own rendition of how suddenly exciting and panic-filled the moment felt. For them, it's a real tool for bonding. If you had $1 for each time a hunter recounted an encounter that turned out to be a deer, you could probably fund your own expedition to unearth the secrets of the Loch Ness Monster. But soon enough, the mood shifts back into discussions about equipment. You all agree that while you can't claim you saw Sasquatch, you can assure one another that you did experience nature in all its raw glory. Who wouldn't want to feel the fear of an overripe burrito in the heart of the wild, surrounded by whispers of Bigfoot sighting that replaces any robust enthusiasm with laughter? As the stars peer down, contemplating their own form of early nocturnal ridicule, the crowd slowly turns to tales from the 1970s that authentically captivated the masses. Did Bigfoot attend the Woodstock Festival? Was he grooving alongside Jimi Hendrix? You share how legends only compound absurdity when they pass through the wilderness. Gossip leads to stories, stories lead to folklore, and before you know it, Bigfoot will have friends ghostwriting memoirs under the pseudonyms of established 70s rockers. In the end, every expedition will endure a mixture of letdowns and odd moments, turning into antediluvian tales that hang in the air until morning. After all, Bigfoot doesn't make appearances, not because he's hiding, but because he knows how to truly keep an audience captivated until they learn the greatest story of all, that sometimes the hunt for the unfindable leaves you with the unforgettable. You might not spot Sasquatch, but you create a lifetime of laughter, drags through muck, and burritos flying under the stars along with the sassy thoughts of how many more meals of bush-fried potatoes will be sacrificed in cutely tragic anticipation. Let's dive into those wildly entertaining conspiracy theories that circulate like hot gossip around the campfire. Is Bigfoot an alien? A long-lost cousin of the California governor? A time traveller incarnate? Each idea more ridiculous than the last, you survey who's taking notes in the corner, creating a master pamphlet for a secret society that might actually convince folks to join their elusive cause. And all its outlandishly tedious meetings. Picture this, a group of shaggy-haired enthusiasts huddled in a smoky room, scratching down notes and making grand hand gestures as they debate the finer points of Bigfoot as a government cover-up. Is he really just a guileful agent meant for distraction? I wouldn't be surprised if someone slipped in the allegation that every time a news anchor grabs a snack, Bigfoot swipes a car key. Our conspiracy might leap faster than a deer in the woods, from Bigfoot's supposed ties to secret military projects to wild quips about him being an embodiment of nature itself, not just a mythological creature. Of course, there's the overwhelming fear of government manipulation here. Could these hunters really emerge victorious with not just sightings, but an entire Sasquatch Congress? Just imagine the debates on pollution, consumerism, and how to renew your fishing license with a creature that supposedly spends more time in shadows than municipal buildings. And trust me when I say, as wild and whimsical as these theories are, they only get better with the addition of the grandest of rants about interdimensional gateways. Yes, some Bigfoot believers hold the conviction that Sasquatch isn't merely hoarding a decent Instagram filter, he's traversing dimensions. So the next time you hear rustling in the bushes, the theory goes, don't assume it's furry legs shuffling around. Nope, it's just a highly misunderstood tree hugger trying to escape his own universe. Someone pops the question, but what if we're all just holograms in his dimension? You chuckle while others around the fire groan and roll their eyes. Yet even they can't resist leaning in closer, eager to catch every untamed twist and turn of this cosmic tale. Who needs UFOs or government conspiracies when you've got the great hairy man who wants to reveal the truth to humanity but can't seem to figure out the whole talking thing? But here's where it starts to get serious. After delving into the latest gossip about who might actually be complicit in keeping the Bigfoot tales alive, you find the conversation shift. The scope of Sasquatch's narrative becomes broader. It's not just about some creature wandering the woods anymore. There's talk about the environmental crisis, nature's hidden wisdom, and mankind's negligence. Maybe Bigfoot represents a larger warning, a sign from the universe that we're too consumed with screens and fast food to truly appreciate the wild quirks of our planet. Maybe he's more profound than we could ever fathom. In this enchanted world of make-believe, the potential ramifications of Sasquatch sightings catch on like wildfire. The more you chat, the more every rustle or shadow feels charged with significance, urging everyone to turn into a mythical interpretation of a philosopher, pondering deeply disguised lessons about our lives. The entire discussion morphs into a symposium of sorts, a crash course on combining ecology with mythos, all rooted in the guise of wanton entertainment. As the fire pizzles down to embers, you can't help but wonder if perhaps all those conspiracy theorists around you are just hungry for connection. The need to share something so outlandishly ridiculous that it makes the drudgery of daily life blend into perfect harmony with wild ideas. So every awkwardly scratched down hot take on Bigfoot becomes less about claiming truth and more about sharing camaraderie in their peculiarities, with laughter echoing amidst the trees and trying to connect dots as convoluted as last night's burrito. You realise this legacy of absurdity isn't potentially futile, it's wildly human. No matter if Bigfoot exists or not, the spirited disbelief in something kooky ties back to a broader inquiry of purpose and understanding, the desire to find meaning in a world that often runs faster than we do. And with that, just like the best of dreams, the stories continue to grow wilder, richer, and undoubtedly more ridiculous, illuminating the mind surrounding you under the bright, watchful eyes of some low-hanging stars. So as the fire flickers down to quietude, don't be surprised if you find yourself adding a few notes of your own into the mix. After all, in the grand scheme of this Bigfoot hunting saga, nothing is quite too outlandish, and maybe one day you'll even convince someone to believe that he's the ghost of the world's greatest wilderness advocate. After all, why not have a legendary protector who would rather remain a myth than submit to the chaos of humanity? When it comes down to legendary footage of Bigfoot, it's truly a testament to the power of lousy filming techniques. Each shaky frame captures nothing but desperation and dust, rather than the grand creature of urban lore, raising a bunch of questions rather than showcasing real evidence. Is it too much to ask for steady hands? Or were they trying to put together a horror film on a budget? All the while, you can't help but wonder, how does a person recover from capturing shades of what could be Bigfoot on a 20-year-old camcorder? Picture this. You're out in the woods with a group of fellow enthusiasts who share your quirky interests. The sun dips low, casting eerie shadows on the dense foliage as the anticipation mounts. You've been out here for hours, your snacks reduced to crumby remnants of granola bars and questionable sandwiches that whispered sweet nothings about expiration dates. As you set up your camcorder, complete with an angle only a proud parent would approve of, your friend insists on capturing your best side. Spoiler alert, the camera was aimed at a bush half the time, leaving you wondering if the tree stump beside you has more charisma than your backlit silhouette ever could. Remember, this isn't just any footage, it's about to become viral footage. You know the kind. One frame of what might be a grass-stained sock on a shoe that might look like a hairy foot if you squint just right. The manual focus rolls down to a magnificent macro shot of, say, moss, while your friend tries to play cinematographer. Imagine them gesticulating wildly while failing at reenacting a scene from an old western. Look, there's Bigfoot. They're so creative. You squint, your shoulders shrugging as if to say, either it's Bigfoot or someone misplaced the jello. Flash ahead to the moment everyone believes they finally got it. The camera shakes, and then a shadow. Could it really be the legendary creature? It's so exciting until realizes it's nothing but the reflection of your cold burrito getting too close to the campfire. Cheers erupt in disbelief, and shouts of, "That'll be the headline," fill the screen, a remix of sheer delusion and an impending existential crisis. Hours later, you find yourself huddled around a monitor filled with anticipation and half-emptied bagged chips. With bated breath, you replay the moment claiming to be the legendary encounter, waiting for that one sizzling frame of definitive proof. Instead, you recognize your friend's Crocs in the background, slowly causing your footage of the year to transform into, "What were we drinking?" Alas, DVD players are notorious for blowing up at the most crucial moment. Likely every documentary of the past was a directorial decision rather than outright skill. As the night deepens, the footage becomes an instant cult classic. Random snips appear on message boards, each viewed with increasing skepticism, often narrated by armchair experts who claim to have spent nights on the hunt. Suddenly every blurry dot could be Bigfoot. Every suspicious movement could be an unknown beast. This ignites unnecessary debates that echo deeper into the night. Most of your friends claim to see it. No, wait, it was a bear? But you, of course, have one foot steeped in disbelief and the other in the marsh of mixed messages. It's the Bigfoot version of Where's Waldo? But consider the details. Who could forget the grizzled old man named Gus, who swears he once saw that foot on his porch? His charisma rivals stage actors, even while cementing Bigfoot's existence in local folklore. You know, everyone drives the next day to track down Gus Bigfoot tales, throwing newspapers into the town's heart, printing glossies named the Sasquatch Chronicles. They might as well add a conspiracy section next to the local classifieds. Fast forward to Sunday, when the world seems to have forgotten the myth for the moment. Someone brings along outdated footage as the highlight of that week's potluck. You brace yourself, preparing to watch the same pie slice of legendary footage that fueled your group's own folklore, which now feels as elastic as floppy socks on a wet summer day. After all the snack debates on which chips were the best, you look back at the retina-burning quality of your discovery. Bigfoot, blurry but bold, living life on the margins of captured media. And thus, amidst the absurdity unfolds a momentous concept. The quest for Bigfoot bleeds into creativity, framing who we are and what we chase beyond the woods. As you sit there, munching on your mystery meat burrito, you realise we all hold a silly little piece of hope in our hearts that maybe, just maybe, something amazing lurks out there. It calls us to venture forth, armed with outdated technology, a shaky camera and an open mind, longing to capture that elusive glimpse of the creature, and perhaps a little bit of ourselves along the way. Because if there's one thing that's clear in our search for this legendary being, it's that the only thing more compelling than the footage is the failings, fantasies, and friendships born from those eternal blurry nights under the stars. Who needs perfect details when the laughter we share over searching and squabbling about Bigfoot makes for a far better tale? So here's to that infamous footage, our inverse safari through the mind, forever a reminder that sometimes nothing says missing the mark quite like hunting the elusive Sasquatch from the comfort of your own backyard. Let's face it, the likelihood of spotting this legendary creature is somewhere in the area of winning the lottery while riding a unicorn. Each flyer is plastered with eyewitness accounts, boasting enthusiastic claims from the same folks who spend 12 hours in the woods just to catch literally nothing of substance. Yet here they are, adamant they've found the holy grail of Sasquatch-related footage, all while dodging the local wildlife and trying not to barbecue their own hair over the campfire. Imagine standing in the middle of these dense woods, armed with nothing but a flashlight and your mum's old camcorder. After all, what's better than shooting Bigfoot footage in 240p? You'll hear a rustling in the bushes and adrenaline will surge through your veins, convincing you that today is the day you'll become a viral sensation. Meanwhile, in reality, you're just as likely to fulfill your destiny as the awkward guy who accidentally recorded a deer shrugging at him. The truth? You might even scamper off to the local diner for a milkshake and share your close encounter with a bewildered waitress instead. And let's discuss these so-called sightings. They often involve accounts that could only be described as the modern-day equivalent of ghost stories told around a campfire. Picture a group of grown adults huddled together under the stars, crafting elaborate narratives about a fleeting shadow crossing their path, or a distant howl that unmistakably sounded like someone's Uncle Larry. Each tale grows more outlandish as the night rolls on, embellished by its tellers, who somehow believe Sasquatch will be both impressed and offended if he doesn't appear for an audience. Have you ever noticed how these eyewitness accounts seem to come with their own unique flavour of embellishment? A blurry blob in a photo quickly turns into a hulking beast, turning all too sudden into a tape measure for how far you can outstretch your fabrications. I swear it was at least 8 feet tall, someone will exclaim, as the guy who knocked over the beer by tripping realises the massive creature was actually an old log, which you thought looked a bit too health-sconed to be a Sasquatch. When it comes to actual evidence, a blurry photo, a giggle-inducing video, a mysterious footprint in the muddy ground, our leads turn into more of a finger-pointing contest than a proper investigation. The dedicated Bigfoot hunter might try to convince you that they're experiencing something profound, some sorts of spiritual enlightenment while trekking through the wilderness, only for you to learn they just suffered a heinous encounter with poison ivy. Is that a Sasquatch glow, or a desperate attempt to soothe a rash that has reached life-threatening proportions? And let's talk about the gear. Each trusted device, night vision goggles, recording equipment, and oddly specific scents designed to lure Sasquatch like ye olden days. Bigfoot cologne only acts as a distraction. Ever check the calendar? It's 1975, not 2075. You're traipsing through the underbrush, hoping the jiggle of your £5 camera won't scare off Bigfoot, and simultaneously wondering if your old high school's drama club really had this much influence on your current explorations. Still, consent to technology doesn't guarantee success. The heart of your adventure may very well hinge on whether you remember to charge your devices or bring enough batteries, in which case you might as well be armed only with your trusty walking stick and a stack of graham crackers. If you find yourself muttering, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. Just try to keep the soda pop buzzing and nuggets of your past Googled wisdom at bay as random hikers look on in bewilderment. Ultimately, what you learn from these sightings is that all the fun, excitement, and absurdity come wrapped up in the hilariously serious attempt to find a creature many would argue doesn't exist. The shared camaraderie and laughter that comes from these searches may be worth the price of an all-too-empty trophy cabinet. Yet every person still leaves the woods with a treasure trove of stories, from chasing shadows to hearing rustling in the distance, that somehow always proves to be a much bigger shot of nature's own jazz. It's this magic, the camaraderie, the anticipation, the ridiculousness, that makes the hunt for Bigfoot decidedly unforgettable, even if the fabled creature remains perpetually out of reach. So the next time you hear a tale of Bigfoot or consider joining the wild chase, remember that you're not just hunting a creature, you're partaking in an intricate dance of community, uncertainty, and pure absurdity. Because at the end of the day, whether Sasquatch exists or not, we all get a little glimpse of magic, or at least a chuckle, amidst the tales of blurry camcorders, could have been encounters, and undeniably adventurous spirits. While hunters put forth all their energy into finding Bigfoot, the actual horrors of the woods take form in the very real critters dwelling out here. Lizards, snakes, and mosquitoes create more horror story material than you'll ever get from the imagined Bigfoot sighting. Ever tried defending your milkshake from a swarm of angry bees while bearing the signs of an urban fable gone wrong? You might as well be standing in the middle of a horror film, clutching that milkshake like it's your last lifeboat on the Titanic while the bugs are auditioning for the next big attack of the swarming pests. Imagine it now. There you are, armed with nothing but your tin cup of whatever questionable beverage you packed, only to have it swarmed by insects thick enough to bear a family resemblance to Wookiees. How is it that something so small can create such a big buzz in your ears and a tingling sensation on your skin that feels like thousands of tiny electric shocks? Meanwhile, your friends, bless their misguided souls, swear they heard the sound of a Sasquatch just 10 feet away. Is that a creature of legend or just my imagination, you think, while swatting furiously and praying none of your bites become the next chapter in a nature documentary titled How to Get Eaten Alive by Something Small. And let's not forget the lumbering lizards that shake off the summer sun like they're strutting their stuff on a runway. These guys are masters of the stealthy ambush, waiting for the perfect moment to drop from a tree branch or sneak across the path just when you've convinced yourself the only wildlife you'll encounter is a squirrel wearing sunglasses. No one expects a repurposed lizard to remind you that there's more creeping around than just your fried hallucinations of an 8-foot-tall ape, especially when they dart underfoot like tiny streaks of panic. Then come the larger-than-life experiences with snakes. Imagine stepping confidently into the woods, only to hear that all-too-familiar rustle in the underbrush. Cue the soundtrack of your heart doing a backflip as you see that 12-inch garter snake that could easily be mistaken for a python in the dark. Just like that, you forget about Bigfoot altogether and become the trembling embodiment of what not to do in the wild. The forest sings with fear, and all sense of pride in being a daring adventurer dissipates faster than your last trail snack. What would you give for just 1 ounce of that legendary Sasquatch's bravery right now? Then there are the fine dining horrors. dining under the stars while nasty little critters eye your food like it's the last meal on Earth. Ants, attracted by your delicious potato salad, which you handed your last peppermint for, emerge like a tiny army ready to wage an all-out war on your sustenance. Who knew your picnic would end in a skirmish over a half-smashed banana? The truth of the matter is quite simple. You set out to find Bigfoot, but you could easily find yourself becoming the first human to succumb to nature's culinary critique. Of course, wildlife enthusiasts must abide by the golden rule of outdoor adventures: never feed the animals. But let's be honest, when those cute little squirrels approach, all fuzzy cheeks and begging eyes, who wouldn't want to toss a peanut and watch it scurry away happily? Spoiler alert, that peanut toss often invites other woodland denizens to come over for the buffet, including raccoons, who are basically nature's little trash pandas with a serious grudge against your late-night snack choices. It's a wild affair, but it adds unrefined joy to your night, being outsmarted by critters that look cuter, yet somehow more terrifying than your average horror movie antagonist. In the end, as you attempt to track down that Sasquatch, take a moment to appreciate your woodland companions, whether friendly or frightful. Because if Bigfoot hears about how woefully unprepared you are against the terrors of the woods, he may very well choose to remain out of sight, saving himself the drama of an impending food fight. Your friends may be looking for truth over the crispy shadows of the trees, but you could easily win the battle against the unsung heroes of your camping weekend's antics. So, while you're out hunting Bigfoot, just remember, the real legendary tales of terror are encompassed in those tiny creatures that exist right under your nose, and who knows, you might even find a moral in the chaos boxed in a snack of mixed almonds and candy-coated pretzels. You know, for flavour. Now the science of Sasquatch tracking emerges, and it's filled with more dubious definitions than a poorly translated travel guide. Between hair samples that probably belong to your crazy uncle's shed and scratches made by overzealous squirrels, is Bigfoot even a creature that needs to exist in the first place? The signs are everywhere, encoding everything from old snack wrappers to those weird footprints half-baked by the riverbank. In your quest to find the infamous Sasquatch, you may start wondering if there's a checklist you never received, or worse, if the real trick is to decipher everything except his actual existence. First up on the Sasquatch Identifiers toolkit is the footprint quandary. Imagine a creature with massive feet, so large they could make trampoline jumping seem like a leisurely walk. However, instead of clearly defined tracks, you'll only encounter vague outlines that might just be the remnants of a bear trying too hard to impress. The moment you lay eyes on an impressively large footprint, your excitement ignites like a firework in a sea of mediocrity. Yet, as you bend down, closely examining whether or not those mid-sized 90s sneakers belong to your hunting buddy, it's evident. This could either be Sasquatch's size 14, or just your imagination making terrible leaps in judgment. Next comes the fuzzy evidence filter. Here lies your opportunity to decipher hair samples, most of which could double as lost knitting projects from your great-aunt, who believes the wilderness needs more pom-poms. In this classic hunt for truth, you find yourself entrapped in lights from multiple flashlights, gazing into fleecy strands that either belong to a local bear or, and this is key, a mystery cat that clearly crushed its grooming preparation for that night. You peer at those golden fibres, lost in thought. Is it Sasquatch fur or just your cat's latest fashion disaster after a tumble in the backyard? But let's not forget those unexplainable sounds echoing through the night, a series of grunts and calls that morph into a passionate debate among your hunting party over whether the Sasquatch is attempting to communicate or just your GPS trying to reconnect with the satellites. Every unexpected rustle and howl becomes the ultimate audio puzzler as you silently signal to your comrades, Did you guys just hear that? Meanwhile, the current events of your social anxiety paint an entirely different landscape, as your brain prioritizes possibilities from friendly critter conversations to panic-stricken imaginings of Bigfoot's sad solo karaoke night gone awry. Hunger rolls around, and the tight-lipped atmosphere turns to the snack wrapper incident. As campfire stories later wander to Sasquatch's diet of choice, you can't help but wonder if Bigfoot enjoys potato chips alongside its ribs of mystery meat. In the sheer chaos of culinary delights or misadventures, the collective experiences of snack wrappers being recklessly discarded transform into valuable evidence of organic life. Then there's the forest floor. Much like an episode of MTV's Cribs, everybody has a theory about what kind of foliage will bring you good luck. From specific plants associated with Bigfoot sightings to the exact angle at which our fabled creature savours his herbs, you might just find that browsing plant identification apps will require as much focus as finding Sasquatch himself. Is that a promising patch of fern or just a bunch of confused weeds arguing over territory? Because let's face it, once you're knee-deep in nature, who needs proper identification? Your focus shifts from verification to inspiration, where all that matters is finding the closest coffee shop having a special on lattes. Suddenly you stumble upon a nervously uncertain squirrel tracks. Yes, the small, beady-eyed creatures that have apparently marched through every inch of the forest, leaving behind tracks larger than your appetite for donuts after a long hunting day. Oddly enough, you find these creatures engaging in mischievous antics, appear to make their way to secret squirrel society meetings while you trample in search of Sasquatch, totally forgetting your original goal. Meanwhile, your crew debates whether it's likely that Bigfoot would even bother befriending squirrels, let alone invite them into his woodland wonderland. The kicker? After all this tracking, evidence gathering, and wild speculation, you realise that all these signs, so carefully compiled in journal entries, might never lead you to the ultimate conclusion of spotting Sasquatch himself. Instead, they become a richly woven tapestry of friendly forest companions, snacks, and philosophical questions about nature's array of confusion. The real Sasquatch, it seems, has taken a back seat to the magnificent insanity of the hunt itself. So here you find yourself, not just a hunter anymore, but a philosopher of wilderness, pondering the deep symbolism behind a shaggy hairball resembling your old pet. Maybe that's the real beauty of tracking Sasquatch, imbued with friendships and the questionable charms of the creatures lurking around you, all while sipping coffee brewed over campfires. For some, the pursuit of Bigfoot wraps itself around bonding with the landscape to such an extent that they might claim spiritual expansion or enlightenment. More people wonder if their love for forests might next evolve into a spiritual relationship with their shampoo bottles, but who's to decide? The point, however, is whether perusing the great outdoors meets spiritual philosophy, or if you just forgot your birth control at the last campout. As you wander the wilderness, the trees become your confidants, and the rocks your therapist. Tell me more, O wise boulder, you might muse, eyes wide as a raccoon just took a karate class in the underbrush. Now, let's just pause for a moment and reflect. Are those moments of enlightenment or merely an overly caffeinated hallucination brought on by last night's s'mores extravaganza? Most folks would agree that when you spend enough time in nature, especially while looking for a mythological creature, you start feeling a connection to something bigger. Call it trees, call it the great outdoors, or simply call it a case of nature withdrawal after too many days of dodgy camping. But nothing beats that moment you hold a twig up to the sky and proclaim, "This is my spirit animal," while your buddy rolls his eyes, wondering where he left his sanity. This sacred bond with nature often manifests in strange rituals, such as chanting to the wind or feeding the squirrels your extra nuts. Who knew nuts would also translate to a personal spiritual connection? You and the woods create your own sacred vocabulary, a mix of giggles, awkward stares and whispers of, "Look at that tree! Do you think it has feelings?" Tree huggers would be proud, yet nature doesn't appear to make such distinctions among the beings wandering beneath its canopy. Now, let's talk about the real challenge here, attempting to synthesize serious philosophy while under the influence of mosquito repellent. While pondering the cosmos, inebriated by the serenity around you, someone accidentally knocks over your stash of dried fruits, and before you know it, the crickets are figuring out how to form an orchestra around your existential musings. Who needs literary giants when you could instead be graced by the vibe of a grasshopper's buzzing serenade? Through all these light-hearted follies, it's hard not to notice the deep-seated urge among Bigfoot hunters to explore themes about spirituality, existentialism, and personal growth while stumbling through the woods. But here's the kicker. Every time you feel that connection to nature, it's accentuated by the reminder that you still have to head back to your car, where the real world awaits, filled with laundry, bills, and adult responsibilities. So maybe your spiritual encounter ventures further when you realise that the contemplative patio behind a chainsaw factory also matters. After all aspects of life are deserving of a spiritual angle, even the dull ones. No. One said the search for Bigfoot would end in divine enlightenment, but it surely breeds community among like-minded souls drinking cheap beer around campfires. They exchange wild theories about interdimensional travel, perhaps arguing that Bigfoot is indeed just your uncle wearing an ape suit eating chips in the moonlight. The conversation flows, like questionable wine, while contemplating Bigfoot's faith in humankind. "Does he care?" someone asks, gazing into the flames as if they might reveal the answers to the universe. Despite the comedy, this pursuit does tether people with moments of sincerity, laughter and friendship. For those in search of Bigfoot, it's often the shared duration of time spent pondering meaning, crafting stories, and engaging in cosmic debates that defines the experience. Obviously, it's less about locating Bigfoot's elusive foot, and more about solidifying connections with each other as you navigate the unknown. And so, dear listener, as your journey through the wilderness winds down to a close, take a moment to think about what you've learned about yourself, your friends, and the wilderness. Whether your enlightenment transcends mundane reality or evaporates like the morning mist doesn't really matter. Ultimately, you might just walk away, realizing that karaoke nights in the forest, while wearing bear costumes and singing about Sasquatch, might very well constitute the spiritual awakening we all needed. After all, clarity often arrives at the most unexpected moments, in the woods, by the campfire, and during the quest for Bigfoot. So grab your flashlight, take a swig from your thermos, and prepare to wonder just how many life lessons you can derive from a mysterious creature that may, or may not, actually exist. If Bigfoot were female, there's a whole new conversation that could ensue on gender roles and societal expectations. Would she be strutting around with a campaign for equal rights? Maybe starting a furry feminist movement of her own? Imagine nudging your friend and asking, could the elusive Bigfoot be the fierce feminist we never knew we needed? Cue the cheers and gasps as creatures hoot from the treetops over the sudden declarations of maternity leave for the forest. But let's really dive into what Bigfoot would represent if she were a woman navigating the wild, hairy terrain of the 1970s. Picture this. Instead of lurking in the shadows, she'd be front and centre, holding town hall meetings with squirrels about property rights and fair treatment in the wilderness community. No more hide and seek. The sassy Sasquatch would be smashing the patriarchy and challenging the narrative that women's strength is defined by the absence of hair. Why grow a fabulous mane if you can't flaunt it? She'd put the legendary Call of the Wild to a catchy disco beat, rocking groovy dance-offs in the moonlight with all her forest friends. Now think about her wardrobe. Would our sassy Bigfoot opt for the practical fur or showcase her wild style with hot pink tie-dye and peace sign embellishments? She would transform the furry ensemble into a fashion statement, sending ripples of colourful fabric through the forest. Her Bigfoot prints would be surrounded by a collection of bedazzled rocks as she stomped through the woods promoting body positivity. Let them stare while they gather their tiny men's business suits. My large feet are here to walk all over traditional expectations. Have you imagined her spreading her message through a meadow, clutching a megaphone carved from a fallen tree, preaching the great Sasquatch gospel of self-love? Ladies and gentlemen of the forest, you need not hide behind trees or dance in the moonlight alone. Join me in embracing our unique hairy selves, brush that tangles like the world's opinions. Take pride in your body hair, for it is merely evidence of your fabulous identity. In this alternate Sasquatch universe, our heroine would surely form alliances with other creatures, the wise old owl serving as her PR manager, strategically spinning tales to boost her following. Step aside, antelope. If you want a leading lady, the sassy Sasquatch is here to capture the hearts of the woodland and run an eco-friendly movement. Imagine owls twirling tiny girl power banners, while excitable raccoons become her social media team, documenting her exploits through blurry photos taken with the latest Polaroids. But wait, what does Bigfoot do when she's faced with those pesky woodsmen? Our feminist icon would outsmart them with the kind of humour only a creature of her stature could manifest. One day, when a group of hunters set up camp dangerously close to her stomping grounds, she'd quietly plot a series of amusing pranks. First, she'd steal their sandwiches, because what better way to protest than to deprive the patriarchy of their precious sustenance? The chaos that ensues as they argue over lost lunch would become legendary, eventually leading to a viral documentary titled When Sasquatch Strikes, The Mysterious Case of the Missing Corned Beef. Meanwhile, as the woodsmen share tales of their unbelievable encounters, the sassy Sasquatch would laugh deep within the safety of her grove, flipping through a magazine filled with headlines like Bold, Beautiful and Bustling, The Sasquatch Woman's Guide to Forest Leadership. It would feature tips on tree climbing while wearing flower crowns and advice on how to negotiate wood contracts with local homeowners to secure better forest rights. The conversation around our female Bigfoot would transform from whispers and giggles into roaring applause. You know, you'd tell your friend, she might just be the ultimate representation of courage and individuality. In the end, our beloved sassy Sasquatch would put the idea of strength into the light and wild, reminding us that even the most fantastical characters can embody traits we value in everyday life. So tomorrow, as you walk through the woods, or perhaps spot a remote figure in the distance, don't just think of him as the big furry legend. Maybe the true sassy spirit of Bigfoot is alive and well, advocating for rights under the enchanting moonlight, drumming up support for a world that recognises her power, humour and dedication. After all, who said legends can't be fabulous? And after a long day of mishaps and miscommunications, why not relish in the chaos over a potluck of stale crackers and suspicious stew? Conversations about potential captures often turn into wild discussions, debating whether that feathery snack in the corner was a clever ruse from the food chain, or just another disappointment served lukewarm. You know, I think Sasquatch invented cold pizza just out of spite, someone quips, buzzing with energy from caffeine and poor life choices. Everyone laughs, but deep down there's a collective realisation that the only legitimate capture here may be the greasy sandwich that's been glaring at you from behind a tree, quietly plotting its revenge. As the sun sets, the campfire crackles, igniting quirky theories that spiral quicker than Bigfoot allegedly does through the woods. What if he's a vegetarian? One hunter pipes up. with the seriousness of someone who's just discovered his life's calling through a highway bumper sticker. I mean, look how fluffy he is. He couldn't possibly eat anything that doesn't have a nice herbal crunch. The room erupts into a fit of laughter, imagining Bigfoot munching on organic kale, meticulously checking ingredient labels before each tasty snack. Someone else confidently proposes that perhaps he solely survives on roasted acorns and herbal tea. A Sasquatch seeking the vegan lifestyle and enlightenment through nature. Amid the laughter, there's another moment of reflection. "You know," says a rather contemplative member of the group, "I've always thought he might actually be our long-lost cousin. Ungrateful and hairy, just like Uncle Joe." This line prompts everyone to delve into familial anecdotes featuring questionable relatives that could likely scare even Bigfoot off his game, which is saying something. Yeah, Uncle Joe doesn't carry the family hunt on his shoulders like Sasquatch supposedly does, but we do suspect he might be well acquainted with a mean growl when confronted with a poorly grilled Brontosaurus burger. And let's not forget the potluck centerpiece, Grandma Jan's infamous mystery stew. It has turned into the stuff of legends, with its greenish hue and the unsettling ability to jiggle oddly every time someone walks by. What's in this, you dare to ask, scanning the room for answers, half hoping a local Sasquatch has left behind the secret recipe, only to resign in despair. Grandma Jan shrugs her shoulders, raising her hands as if to suggest you take your chances. It's either rabbit, turkey, or something that might have been named Fluffy at some point. Just don't ask too many questions, let the stew write its own legend. All the while, the well-intentioned vegetarian from earlier proposes that perhaps Bigfoot's presence in folklore is a defense mechanism created by nature, designed to keep everyone at bay from the hearty confusion lurking in the woods. Do you dare bring up the national panic over sightings? Most people moved beyond that after the third episode of a terrible talk show. Imagine the news, you state matter-of-factly. Local youths frightened by a rogue, shaggy-haired giant snatching every half-eaten meal left in the woods. No breadcrumbs left behind, just heartstrings tangled under pressure from the stew. Everyone chuckles, content in the absurdity that surrounds a dinner planned to net unparalleled discussions on the truth behind a legendary creature. At the quiet climax of conversation, you can't help but muse whether Bigfoot even exists as a creature in the literal sense. Maybe he's a cautionary tale, a charismatic boogeyman dressed in the shadows of our own fatal errors, scaring campers into packing sandwiches instead of burritos. It's for the greater good, really. At that moment, half the group begins to pen a bizarre musical about Bigfoot, complete with their own dulcet tones that may invoke Sasquatch's attention. Watch out! Everybody! The real Bigfoot might just be searching for his musical debut in a forest near you! By the time everyone's punctuated their last story with an exaggerated concern, you realise it might not just be dinner that binds this crew together. It's the shared madness, the peculiar camaraderie stemming from the insatiable thirst for the hunt that continues to fuel the absurd. Grinning through bemused chuckles, you find solace in the fact that, whether Sasquatch is a glutton for all things potatoes or hiding behind a boulder in disdain, the great adventure is only more amusing through camaraderie, laughter, and the relentless hope of one day bumping into your own personal Bigfoot, preferably over a gourmet meal of whatever that mysterious stuff was. Eventually, one must confront the inevitable reality. The Bigfoot expedition is not merely a grand adventure, but a long-winded way to escape chores and other existential dread back home. As you share bewildered glances, trying to convince yourself you didn't spend 3 days tracking the wind, the peer pressure surges. Everyone's making promises about next time, while secretly contemplating if a snooze button would work out better than hunting Bigfoot again. The truth hits harder than your buddy Greg after he briefly mistook a tree stump for the legendary creature. As the sun dips below the horizon, you stare into the campfire, hoping it will conjure some wisdom regarding how to answer family and friends' questions about your fabled trip into the woods. You gather around, contemplating the reality of your unfulfilled adventure. Instead of dauntless encounters, you've shared tales of late-night campfire critters and a surefire plan to revive what very well might be a loopy urban legend. Your camp chef's suspicious Bigfoot stew, a delightful mix of yesterday's leftovers and some kind of plant life you can't quite identify, has really shaken up everyone's enthusiasm too. As you try to wash down the last remnants with bad coffee, a wave of regret washes over you, and you start questioning all those sightings. Is it really Sasquatch that's elusive, or is it simply sanity? But the camaraderie is palpable. You laugh awkwardly, wrestling with your pride and weighing the bittersweet memories against the impending return to reality. Who knew you could bond over fermented burritos, shattered dreams, and the hopeful delusions of a mythical man-beast? Maybe this was the real adventure all along, creating stories that would serve as legendary fodder for the barbecues to come back home. You can already hear it now in the future. Nah, he wasn't a bear, Bob. That legend was clearly Sasquatch. I have footage, well, sort of, just squinty shadows. Despite your inner conflict, the entire crew has collectively agreed never to admit defeat. Next time, says someone, unsure of which next time might actually occur. Every head nods as another round of tall tales and promises punctuates the air, while the reality grounded in exhaustion begins to sink deeper. The promise of finding the mythical creature next time becomes less about Sasquatch and more a joke about being brave enough to try again, while also postponing chores until indefinitely. As you roll up your sleeping bag, there comes a moment of reflection, that's slightly mournful, knowing that maybe you'll just hike through the woods, holding on to whatever shreds of optimism you have left. Maybe it's about embracing the absurdity of it all, wearing mismatched socks, tenting over weeds, and hoping for moments, the ones that inspire deep belly laughs, or even better, an accidental tete-a-tete with a bushy-haired antiquity. Perhaps deep down, you realise that the elusive creature you sought wasn't actually Bigfoot. It was you all along, hiding behind layers of indecision and existential dread. But the bittersweet trip won't come without some form of closure. You all stumble back toward your vehicles, heaving backpacks and sustained joy mixed with the pungent scent of last night's s'mores, lingering in the air like a fragrance you might wear when meeting your ex. Well, at least my backwoods personality is real, you muse, cringing at the captured moments, awkward selfies, and the atrocious misinterpretation of what rustic living entails. Your phone buzzes with smirking notifications about life updates from friends who have been perpetually entertained through social media by tagging you as Bigfoot in every uninspired photo. Returning to civilization is strange, like emerging from a haze of wild imagination into the sharpness of reality, where chores and mundane routines await. There's still a certain level of pride in being able to say, I went on a Bigfoot expedition. The tales you will tell about Bigfoot, the burritos, and Greg's unfortunate bear moment will be intertwined with your sense of humour, at least until the next adventure calls you back into the woods. As your group parts ways, you can't help but wonder if you'll run into them in the next life. A reunion of sorts where a triumph takes the form of slightly cooler camping gear, better food, and a much clearer understanding that maybe the real Bigfoot doesn't really matter. What does matter are those memories forged amid crazy ideas, ludicrous traditions, and the laughter that binds. Now those are the things that sit close to your heart, like a little nugget of joy hidden away for the next time you gather around a campfire. Until then, you'll continue to seek that balance between reality and ridiculousness, knowing full well that both have a place in the adventure of life. As you slowly sift through the cliques, the essence of a dedicated Bigfoot community emerges. But is it a brotherhood or just a collection of folks who've escaped their day jobs to argue over absurd questions about Bigfoot's diet plan? You can't help but picture the next exciting meeting details where they discuss whether Sasquatch is gluten-free or lives exclusively on kale smoothies. Between all the kale and quinoa discussions lies a rich tapestry of enthusiasm, where together they embrace the idea that perhaps their biggest gift is camaraderie, rather than the mythical creature they chase. Imagine yourself thrust into the centre of this motley crew, half the members dressed in tie-dye shirts claiming to be Bigfoot posers, the other half wrapped in camo gear that could make a military surplus store weep with pride. Their absolute dedication is commendable. On one hand, you have the serious adventurers who meticulously study shady spots for footprints, while on the other, there's a group energetically debating the merits of holographic Sasquatch traps. Because who needs actual evidence when you can project a three-dimensional Bigfoot apparition? Gathering around a campfire, their ideas spread like wildfire. They discuss their latest theories with the intensity of a conspiracy theorist, unveiling their well-guarded truths. Could Bigfoot be a time traveller? Did he accidentally lose his way while trying to find the nearest wormhole to the 1970s? Or perhaps he's just a misunderstood hermit trying to outsmart the humans who keep barging into his trees. The complexities of his social life seem to belong in a sitcom rather than a forest, especially with claims that he's been spotted on Tinder. "I'm pretty sure I swiped right on him last week," one hunter jokes, while others collectively fall into fits of laughter. Beyond the laughs, there's a certain level of affection in the air, as each person shares their personal encounters, or the lack thereof. Huddled together, they swap stories about nerve-wracking nights spent rustling in the bushes, yelling into the void with the fervour of someone who has misplaced their keys. You can't ignore the unyielding belief that each time they embark on an adventure, they just might be one step closer to finally proving the existence of their furry friend. What's even more entertaining is that, between myth-busting theories and wild assumptions, they seem united in their shared awkwardness, and their search for that one comically absurd excuse to be outdoors with a side of hot cocoa and campfire marshmallows. And let's not forget those friendships blossoming as they dive deeper into their shared obsession. Instead of typical "how's the weather" small talk, these folks leap into conversations about the physiological and psychological dynamics of the Sasquatch. One delightful character, whom you learn is nicknamed Jiffy, insists that Bigfoot is just a highly misunderstood introvert. He's probably out there at night sipping herbal tea and binge-watching that new nature documentary we all like, Jiffy proclaims, all while nodding in deep, solemn agreement from the others. If only Sasquatch knew how much coffee was stirred up in his honour. As the sun sets, they contemplate the gravity of being part of this whimsical yet oddly resonant community. Just sitting around the campfire discussing the many facets of Sasquatch can feel incredibly enlightening, maybe more than the dusty old history lectures from college. They laugh until their sides hurt, picking apart tales told for generations while listing the ridiculous things that could go wrong when in pursuit of a hairy giant. And as the smoke swirls above, one must wonder, is it the enchantment of Bigfoot that brings them together? Or is it the stories of camaraderie that bring the laughter echoing from tree to tree? At the end of the day, it appears that perhaps the greatest treasure on this quest isn't capturing blurry photographs or discovering human-sized footprints in the mud, but the friendships created in moments spent together between the trees. Sure, there may never be absolute proof of Bigfoot. Maybe that doesn't matter. What counts is the joy derived from silly conversations, shared snacks, and the occasional thrilled belief that out there, Hidden in the shadows is a creature who understands the pains of finding the perfect snack blend on a Wednesday night. In the end, you realise that the real magic lies not in catching Bigfoot, but in the friendships forged through this delightful folly of a quest. Now we step away from the hunters to reflect on what Bigfoot has done to urban legend culture. From tasty tidbits to Instagram posts about searching lost woods while wearing socks and sandals, our once mighty Sasquatch has become an influencer of a different magnitude. Is it possible people would dream about camping just for the chance to run into a mythical creature for their next viral TikTok video? The allure of Bigfoot has morphed from a frightening forest spectre into a quirky mascot for every product, from granola bars to garden gnomes. You can almost picture it. Someone wearing an I Love Bigfoot t-shirt, standing next to a gigantic inflatable Sasquatch in someone's backyard, ready to be featured in a parade of inflatable friends, like an oversized, hairy, inflatable buddy just waiting to go viral. Imagine the family's confused expressions when they unwrap a life-sized Yeti statue for Christmas. Imagine having to explain that one to the neighbours when it becomes the star of the front yard. Let's face it, social media has transformed our understanding of folklore. Maybe that elusive beast has turned into the ultimate example of how to curate an online presence. Bigfoot sighting currently trending alongside Monday motivation and waffle iron recipes on Twitter. It almost makes you wonder if Sasquatch himself will soon need publicist-approved hashtag strategies. Sure, take pictures of me, but please, no more kennels of storgraphics unless it's officially sanctioned. And the rabbit hole runs deep. Go to any local gift shop in towns that claim to be Sasquatch Central, and you'll find everything from Sasquatch cookies to Sasquatch tea blends marketed as the only beverage that won't disappear in your fridge. You could be sipping a cup of Bigfoot Earl Grey while unearthing tales of the legendary creature's supposed adventures in every mountain range within spitting distance of civilization. One has to wonder, does the caffeine in that blend really pack enough of a kick to power the hunt? Urban legends often reflect cultural values and anxieties, and Bigfoot's enduring presence in our folklore reveals much about our fondness for the bizarre and outlandish in times of unease. It's a mesmerising blend of fear and fascination, where he is at once an elusive threat and an unsolved mystery. Plus, what better metaphor for life's uncertainties than a creature we can't quite pin down? Like that ex you always run into at the grocery store, constantly hovering, sometimes leaving you wondering if they're really lost in the cereal aisle again, or if they're silently judging your snack choices. Modern documentary filmmakers have capitalised on this Sasquatch phenomenon, producing reality-style shows focusing on the search for our shaggy friend. You sit down to watch, and suddenly it turns into a group therapy session, a solemn circle around the campfire, sharing their experiences with mysterious silhouettes in the night, wondering if they missed the life-changing moment of capturing something incredible. The dramatic reenactments often involve too much screen time for anyone who suspects they're just over the top. Dramatisations of midweek hikers tangling with a bear. No, Karen, that's just a berry-bloated bear not wanting to partake in your Instagram challenge. These shows have become modern-day folklore, and the truth portrayed gives viewers a sense of belonging, especially to a community that believes passionately in the existence of something greater. Flashbacks whirl across buzzing screens of Bigfoot hunters, seemingly all in name for a community where they can feel accepted, where they belong, and can enthusiastically share their snack options with thinking that perhaps trolls exist and are sharing a few bites of the mystery. Enthusiasts with their newly formed clubs promote town-wide events dedicated to Bigfoot, foot ventures, and good-natured come-hither contests drawing out more attention than even regular fries. However, at the end of the day, overripe tomatoes thrown by bystanders will always be the call of the sceptical masses, but why let that stop the merriment? It's all for fun, after all. So, could it be possible that what began as tales of gruff foreboding have morphed into celebrations of spontaneity and joy? What was once a tale spun to warn children about wandering too far from campfires has now developed into an excuse for groups to gather around fire pits and regale each other with road dog ranging stories of the great Sasquatch. Absolutely. As you nestle into a self-built fort of pillows and leftover camp gear to peruse these truths, take a moment to appreciate how even the strangest stories can unite us, or at least give us a valid excuse not to clean rail tie on days when the woods call for a little adventure. After all, enjoy being swept away in the world of Sasquatch legends, where anything can happen, and the merriest moments often arise just when you least expect them. Along with absurd woodsy escapades comes the persistent educational wonderment around conservation, nature's rhythms, and perhaps why those muddy trails often lead to people's backyards. All these misadventures raise interesting questions about what we've learned while jogging through tall grass. Did we ever even ask why the trees are more animated than our attempts to lure Bigfoot? Or, oh, who cares anyways? A tree isn't posting selfies on Instagram. Yet beneath the laughter and adventurous spirit lies a deeper layer. A quest helped blossom a greater appreciation for the great outdoors, nature's habitats, and the absurdity of human attempts to commune with it. Perhaps you splash through creeks hoping to catch a glimpse of furry legends while simultaneously carrying on a deep inner dialogue about eco-awareness and your penchant for deforestation as a kid. Each step taken through the woods becomes a reminder of the fine balance between urban living and the natural world, a dance only disturbed every time an errant squirrel steals someone's sandwich. These searches foster discussions about biodiversity and the need to protect fragile ecosystems while weaving in that age-old question: can humans ever coexist harmoniously with the wilderness? You can laugh as you recall the group trying to preserve the oyster mushrooms they found, only to discover they had confused a rare species of fungus with another that could lead to certain doom. Honestly, becoming a mushroom expert could be more beneficial than spotting an actual Bigfoot. As nights descend and your campfire flickers to life, stories transform from ridiculous Sasquatch sightings to reflective tales about the very woods you tread. Listen closely, and you might hear some deep thoughts about why those stars above are more a source of inspiration to Bigfoot hunters than the big furry fella who may or may not be taking notes on their misguided escapades. Stories about deer prancing by and nocturnal animals rustling the bush ignite conversations that often veer towards the mere fact that nature, in all its wild glory, deserves our respect, not just our fascination with the legendary. From this search emerges one universal truth: the hilarious misadventures encountered while searching for Sasquatch shine a light on the importance of conserving the world around us. While those intrepid expeditionists joke about staying up all night listening for a heavy-footed creature, they learn more about how fragile forests are, both literally and figuratively, as they share hot cocoa and discuss the many fascinating inhabitants that call it home. What's the point of chasing Bigfoot when we can camp out here, preserve local fauna, and still debate if the figure in the backwoods was actually a raccoon, one might say, highlighting the shift between wild chases to mindful reflections. And let's take a moment to appreciate the bewildering laws of nature. It's as though the universe is saying, you want to find Bigfoot? Great, but first, taste the despair of slippery trails and angry mosquitoes. Every trip brings about some hilarious combination of unexpected detours literally off the main path. It's ultimately these intermissions that become more memorable than the search itself. Anyone who has tussled with a branch while battling 1,000 swirling insects will tell you that those moments are utterly unglamorous, yet transformative. But educational explorations don't stop there. The community that builds around the hunt for Sasquatch is bursting with characters from all walks of life, driven not only by the hope of discovery but also genuine curiosity. The dynamic tends to shift as conversations slip easily between tales of alleged encounters and exchanges of knowledge about local wildlife. You wander through this whimsical cocktail of wisdom, informed not just by the myth of the creature, but by the stories of those closest to our own narratives. Even the humour shared about sketchy gear or half-hearted tracking methods practically blends into lessons about trail etiquette, camping safety, and respecting natural habitats. Before you know it, you've reflexively vowed to respect the paths of the creatures who live there, from the smallest ant to the exhilarating hawk soaring overhead. In the end, while Bigfoot may remain elusive, the real takeaway from these adventures transcends the search itself. It's about the connections formed, the lessons learned, and the shared love of nature that binds everyone together around the campfire. In conclusion, whether or not you ever find the big guy in the woods, the real journey unfolds as you embrace the community and wisdom discovered on the quest. So next time, before you start scouring your local forest in the hopes of capturing that truth right in front of your eyes, pause for a moment to savour the absurdity and the educational gems hidden within your very own Sasquatch-inspired adventures. Perhaps the great mystery isn't just in finding Bigfoot, but in realising humanity's blend of connection and chaos intertwined with nature's vibrant tapestry. Lastly, as night falls and you draw your final conclusions, every hunter leaves with an indelible stamp of memory that stretches beyond the hunt. Whether Sasquatch survives in the rich tapestry of folklore and cheer, or simply becomes a stand-up routine for loose evenings, the elusive creature entices us with homemade maps discovered year after year. So we gather closer, needing companionship while the secrets of big furry beasts reeled in our hearts and led us back to comedy clubs instead. As you sit by the dimming campfire, charred marshmallow sticks cradled in your hands, you can't help but wonder how many tales will emerge from this trip. Perhaps this is where the true magic lies, not in the chase of a legendary creature, but in the shared memories and peculiar traditions you inadvertently crafted along the way. Imagine the camaraderie forged under the glowing embers, each person's laughter mingling with the smoky haze of the fire. You all recount the absurd and often laughable misadventures of crammed tents, clumsy footfalls in darkness, and those inevitable moments where someone claims they've seen something, only to be proven wrong by a particularly confused raccoon. It seems like every Bigfoot hunting expedition quickly turns into a survival guide for laughing through chaos. Did anyone really ever expect to find Bigfoot? Or was that just the excuse to spend an entire weekend in the woods wearing knee-high socks and cheap sneakers? The absurdity of it all forms a friendship stronger than any mythical creature. You glance around and catch sight of Greg, who's now gearing up to tell the biggest story of how he almost encountered Bigfoot 2 years ago, mostly involving him running away from a startled deer that sneezed. Honestly, you can't help but wonder if most stories have more to do with the thrill of sharing than an actual search for Sasquatch. Did Greg ever even see Bigfoot? Or did that encounter become a recurring joke that transcended time, leading to standing dinners in local diners amid plates of deeply fried everything? Besides, Bigfoot isn't just a hairy giant lurking in the forest. He's evolved into a pop culture phenomenon, one that fills the nooks and crannies of the consciousness of every diner, sports event and town gathering. Every time you see another t-shirt emblazoned with a playful image of this so-called creature, it becomes an inside joke. It's like saying you're a Sasquatch survivor qualifies as a badge of honour. So yes, whenever you wear that shirt, you're now a spokesperson for an entire culture devoted to a creature no one is sure exists. And, oddly enough, that's something you can wear with pride. And what of all those moments captured on film? Each grainy video documenting someone's Bigfoot hunting adventure has made its way into countless YouTube compilations, turning laughter into likes. They've somehow become the comedic relief to our everyday chaos, part documentary, part stand-up special. You think to yourself, how did we get here? When did the mere act of capturing footage of a bear become so complex? Wasn't it merely someone being chased in high socks while trying to holler, "Look, the Sasquatch is going that way," all while doing their best to outrun whatever organic matter turned out to be an overexcited dog? As you unwind for the night, drifting deeper into thoughts, you realise that the search for Sasquatch has morphed into a journey more about connection than any mythological beast. You start to appreciate how the countless arguments over the best snacks for the hunt, spoiler, no one actually cares about protein bars, contribute to a greater narrative of friendship and camaraderie. The laughter shared over burnt hot dogs, the spontaneous dances inspired by the campfire's warmth, and even the whispered secrets of trying not to wake the rest of the campsite. It all plays a part in your Sasquatch legacy. In the grand cosmos of things, being a Bigfoot hunter is not just about seeking out the monstrous beast lurking in the woods. It's also about the realities of survival. The laughter, the mishaps, and the plethora of ridiculous evidence that support why you might not need to catch something elusive to recognise the profound value in moments spent under the open sky with friends. Maybe you may just walk away from an expedition feeling a little less concerned about Bigfoot and a lot more grateful for the simple joy of friendship forged amidst the shadows of the trees, and secretly hoping that energetic raccoon takes a night off from scavenging your dinner for a change. You may not find Bigfoot yet, but perhaps the real treasure is realising that sometimes the search for him brings you home in ways you never expected. As you pack up and contemplate how to explain your utterly confused vacation to non-believers, you realise the friendships forged by shared moments are the true treasure found in this ludicrous search. Sitting here with laughter filling the air, you look over the piles of your tightly rolled sleeping bags and wonder if any of them will ever see the light of Sasquatch's fame. Because let's face it, some legends never die, and they leave behind a ridiculous legacy that no one quite understands. You glance around the campsite, now dotted with crumpled recliners and the remnants of half-eaten marshmallows. The camaraderie developed on this trip has transformed ordinary strangers into lifelong friends, each one sporting a few more bug bites and questionable stains on their shirts from trying to chase down the elusive creature. Who knew that a group of adults ranging from nervous newbies to overly zealous veterans would bond so beautifully over the belief in a gigantic, hairy myth? If Sasquatch ever claims responsibility for uniting this ragtag bunch, he deserves a medal for community outreach, though it would probably be made of shiny green aluminum. And speaking of medals, there's a delightful irony in each triumph of the chase. The realisation that most of the evidence you gathered over the course of your journey consists of blurry photos of nothing. Those highly debated mud stains that may or may not be merely from your own hiking boots, and the anecdotes that grow more elaborate with each retelling. After all, next week's barbecue is practically begging for your close encounter tale, especially if you can squeeze in a dramatic twist about how you were almost sent careening into a tree by something, or someone, suddenly darting out from the brush. In perfect campfire storytelling style, you recognise the opportunity for attention as the centrepiece at the next neighbourhood function. You'll never believe what happened in the Pacific Northwest. But just wait a minute. Before these fabulous yarns circulate like brushfire, does it truly matter if Bigfoot exists? They might ask for proof and you'll laugh heartily, recalling how you'll bring them along on the next trip, promising they'll see him for themselves. Oh, just wait until you meet Greg. He can identify the distinct shrubbery that no doubt leads to ancient Bigfoot hunting grounds. They'll nod sceptically, half intrigued and half cringing. And what about your trusty companions, the Sasquatch hunters? You may never see them again unless, of course, the Bigfoot subcommittee mandates a follow-up expedition where you'll valiantly search in vain for unnatural photographs and, for some peculiar reason, rely on Greg to remind you all of the best snacks to bring. As you fumble around in the remaining gear, the truth is that each hilarious miss or misheard Sasquatch call brought some positive and hilarious energy to the group. Hey guys, keep it down. This is a sacred space. Bigfoot doesn't like loud noises. Of course, that also means absolutely nothing when Susan decides to make more s'mores than necessary and promptly lights the forest on fire as her campfire push pops out of control. It may have been a cautionary tale against indulgence, but what a story that turned into. The way life has threads of shared laughter and spirited debates makes the sensory souvenirs of the trip stand out. The strong odour of bug spray combined with that disturbing after smell of burnt marshmallows, faint echoes of howling from excited members of your crew that you so politely reminded that Sasquatch does not in fact howl, all designed as amusing notes that will forever resonate over coffee cups back home. So with everyone's gear packed, you head toward the car, chuckling over the outrageous plans to return next year, this time equipped with more organised strategies, trackers, and perhaps a genuine team of taxidermy experts who might finally aid in authenticating the few fluffy tracks left at the campsite. With a sigh and a humorous shake of your head, you wave goodbye to the wilderness that has forged new bonds while planting seeds of absurdity in your memories. Who knows? Sasquatch may be out there, or perhaps he's just your eccentric neighbour dressed in a costume rummaging through the woods for nachos left over from last week's shindig. Regardless, you arrive back with stories to tell and a heart full of laughter, reminding yourself and everyone else that the memory of the adventure, the sheer ridiculousness of this journey, is what makes it all worthwhile. You're more than just seekers of a myth. You're now keepers of the cherished tradition of making something wholly ridiculous into something beautifully shared and altogether human.